Tokyo Ueno Station by Miri is one of the most interesting books I've read thus far this year. I'll be honest, it is the first book I read in March, so I'm a little bit behind on my reading schedule. However, this was actually a pretty nice book to jump into. For some context, the past 8 books I've read this year have been primarily non-fiction, and Tokyo Ueno Station was meant to be a bit of a break from non-fiction and a breather. I went into this book almost blind because I knew of Miri and her writing skills, and I was like, you know what, I don't look up anything about this book. I'm just going to go into it blind, and I'm glad I did, because although it wasn't the break I wanted to give myself in reading, because it still had some very heavy subjects and touched on some very deep beats in life, I felt it was a very beautifully written book. So, for some context, further context even, Tokyo Ueno Station is basically a book about Kazu, a homeless man in Tokyo, and he's basically telling us about his life experience, what led to this point of his homelessness, and his relationships with his family, his not affair with a woman, but a dalliance almost, if you will, with a woman. It is very beautiful and it's heart-wrenching throughout. I cried about 70 pages into this book, which, to be honest, for me is pretty good because, I sometimes cry in the first chapter of books. But this book really, at its core, is about the working class and the homeless in Japan, as well as Kazu's story, his story being a homeless man in Japan, mostly Tokyo. It's set around 2011, but it does go back to his early life and his midlife. So he's born in 1933, and the modern day is set in 2011, and there are flashbacks throughout his life at key events and things that have happened to him and his family. This book really does tell you about the side of Japan that here in the West we do not see. In the West, the Japan we see is very cleaned up. We kind of not deify, but see this sparkling version of Japan, and that might just be a combination of Orientalism in the West compared and combined with Japan's almost self-marketing of itself, and because of its relationship with the US post-World War II. So we see a very cleaned up version of Japan in the West here. And I'll be honest, that affects my perception of Japan as well as a person, and that's something I need to get better at doing. But this was the first time I'd seen a piece of media, the first time I'd seen a book about Japan from a perspective of the homeless, it mentions the working class. Kazu is a working class man in this book, and it's the side of Japan you don't really see. It's something that me, living in central London, well, not quite central London, but living in London, do see. I see homeless people, but that's not something we ever associate in our minds with Japan. So from that perspective, it was really interesting to see and get some insight and be like, wait, no, Japan, and Tokyo in particular, is a mega city. Of course, it's going to be facing the same issues. There are going to be unhoused people there who have been left behind by the government and the systems put in place. And it was a really insightful look into Kazu's character and how he just is humanized, because I feel like we often don't humanize the houseless as much as we should. They are people at the end of the day, and Kazu describing his compatriots, even, they are all very much humanized. He describes what their lives are like, their personalities. He mourns for one of them. He talks about one of theirs relationship with their pet. It is a very good job at humanizing people who often we do see on the wayside, and we don't consider and think about their humanity They are just like us. They deserve to be treated just like us, but unfortunately, they are not. And it's something we all should strive to do better. I think those are my key takeaways from this book. It's showing us a side of Japan that we often don't see in media, and it's also addressing the issues that the houseless face, and that this is something that happens everywhere from a Western perspective. And I guess maybe from a Japanese perspective, it might be something that they don't see as much. Obviously, I'm not Japanese, so there might be a certain cultural disconnect there for me, which is always something that you come across when you're reading localized books, because there might be some cultural context that is missing, but authors and translators' notes do help to fill that in for you. So, Tokyo Ueno Station, do I recommend it? Yeah, I do. I read it all in one evening sitting. I'm basically recording this about 20 minutes after I finished the book. I recommend it. I think it's not the most difficult of reads when it comes to the emotional aspect. It definitely will make you emotional, but I think you can get through it. It does some really interesting stuff with its narrative and its use of flashbacks, so that did take a little bit of getting used to for myself, just because it's not super obviously delineated in the edition I have, which is the Tilted Axis edition. I love it. The link to the book will be in the description down below. I think that you should check this out. Despite the issues I had with the use of flashback, just me wrapping my head around it at the beginning, I think this is a great book. I definitely recommend it. I mean, yeah, I'm definitely going to get some more Miri books and add those to the list here. So, thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, share the video with a friend or family member. A reminder, the book will be in the description down below from a few places where you can buy it, and it will not be Amazon. Thankfully, I found links to other places that should have worldwide shipping. Thank you for watching, and I hope you read a great book today.